Oh, yes. Well, welcome, Christopher. Can Alan's supposed to be, oh, no, wait a minute. Tony, you're supposed to be introducing. Could you
I didn't
introduce
know.
our,
You know more about him than I do.
Christopher, tell us about yourself.
Yes.
Say wonderful things because you are wonderful.
Well, I've been in the photography world since about 1983 or 1984.
Is that all?
I was still in high school then.
I know. That's
Liar.
I mean,
Yeah, right.
but so a little bit about my background. I was educated. I did my undergraduate and graduate work at Brooks Institute at two different time periods. In between there, I lived in Stuttgart, West Germany. It's kind of fun. I live in try to figure out what countries I've lived in that aren't countries anymore, right? I mean, there's no West Germany anymore. But I taught at Brooks Institute until the school closed. Currently, I teach at Antelope Valley College. I taught last night and I'll teach tomorrow. I teach right now I'm teaching a studio class, which is kind of fun, where we go into the studio and we work with artificial lights. I also teach in a darkroom class out there. We still have a darkroom. It's an interesting program. It's an interesting school. But I'm still teaching out there. I currently work or I freelance about 3 days a week for Deckers. So if you want to know anything about photographing shoes, I'd be more than happy to tell you. I mean, I photographed Uggs, I photographed Tevas, Sanuks, Hoka One, all that fun stuff. I retouch there as well. But it's been really great because the team that I work with, we've been able to transition to, we have a studio at somebody's garage, and all of us retouchers and photographers are around the community, and we've continued to work. It's kind of interesting. Photography goes on. A lot of things are going on. I still teach at Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles as well. Some of you know I have taken students to Paris for, I think, about 7 years. I haven't been able to go the last two. I'm looking forward to going to the next trip. And I teach out at UCSB Extension, but COVID kind of shut that down as well. I like to make fun of other people's cameras as often as possible, to make you feel bad about you don't have what I have, but that's just fun and games. I have a kind of a morbid sense of humor. Students said, hopefully my students know I'm never serious, but my goal is to make us all better photographers. Because to me, photography is a passion. I really enjoy being around people who can speak the similar language and who can be excited about what excites me. And I love working with camera groups. I mean, I've worked with, during the pandemic, the camera group in Northridge, the camera group in Thousand Oaks, the camera group in Santa Barbara, the camera group in Ventura. I can't work with the camera group out in Antelope Valley because they meet when I have class. I'm like, you guys can't do this. So it's kind of fun that Zoom or online has opened up a lot of things that I think were closed before. I have had more participation in some workshops that I did online. And in fact, one of the fun things that I did with one of the camera groups is I just took over the presentation, and I didn't look at their images in Bridge. I opened the images in Lightroom and said, what about this? What about this? So I think some of this online capabilities is really great, especially for a meeting. I can go to a faculty meeting now that I don't have to drive anywhere why do I have to drive to be in a meeting to converse and change ideas? So that's a little bit about me. Uh, it's been tough. COVID's been tough, not because of COVID, not because I have a 16-year-old that turned 17, or an 85-year-old mother-in-law, or two parents stuck in a mountain in Montana. My wife was in the hospital for 30 days and she had a femur replacement. and
Wow.
and so it put things in perspective, and I can't wait to get back to doing photography, and I'm kind of living vicariously through my students because at least I can take them in the studio right now. And the most important thing here is if there's any questions you ever have of me or of what I say, make sure you blurt it out, because we're here to push ourselves to greatness, right? I love the John Sexton quote, strive for perfection, but tolerate excellence. And I love that idea. And last night, 5 people processed film, and 2 of them came out clear. So and that's just part of learning, and it should be enjoyable. Putting a camera in your hand, to me, I think is freedom. It's a privilege. It also can be a wonderful form of therapy, both in terms of art therapy, and so many other ways. So yeah, that's me.
Christopher,
Yeah.
we don't, we've got a rule that we don't usually make comments during the
Okay.
critiques. We save those till
Okay.
afterwards.
Well, write
Yeah.
them down on a piece of paper. And I would love to, uh, you know, I would love to make sure that you understand what I say. And I I am never ever here to do anything but inspire people to do what they love to do and maybe do it just a little bit better. Push us along that road to perfection, right?
Right.
Well, we will appreciate input on how the images might be made better or what you thought was great about our images. Did you
Absolutely.
understand our scoring?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got my cheat sheets here. I understand the top score is 21. I understand the scores kind of broken down into technique, which to me, technique can be both behind the camera and in front of the computer. Composition is how things fall into space, right? How things fall into this length and width uh, 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 requirements that we have to have. I always love to tell my students, I said, photography can never be truly objective because it has a frame and it includes, but it also excludes. And it's also through the eyes of the creator. And I love that. I love trying to tell my students that I want to see what you see unique about the world. And of course, the interest or the impact. To me, a photograph is a conversation. It's a conversation that the photographer creates, and it is put out there for the viewer to bring their own baggage when they look at the image. And I try to explain to students all the time that, my glasses are through my experiences, which can be very similar, they can be very different than yours. And a lot of people have a hard time grasping that, because I wasn't there when the image was created. I don't know all those secrets. I don't know that you had a great sandwich right before you took the photograph that you're remembering. I'm just looking at what's there in front of me. So that's the 7, 7, and 7 with the maximum score of 21. And I know I have to pick like a first, second, and third. So I kind of have a cheat sheet over here on the side, and I'll see if I can follow my cheat sheet.
Okay,
And then I'll
super.
talk to all of those in each image, and try to bring some insight. I love the history of photography too, by the way, and also photographers out there that are not only contemporary but historical, because they worked in this medium, and people who know them will compare your work to those.
Okay,
Well,
Greg, why don't you kick us off here?
yes.
All right. All right, we're going to start with color.
Okay.
We'll do an initial walkthrough so that everybody gets to see what was submitted. And then we'll go back and ask for your comments.
Fantastic.
Mhm. That's really mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's the pictures. No, but you know your own. I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Powells need to mute themselves.
Mm. Yeah.
Okay, Elaine, this is the first one.
Okay, all alone when the pretty birds have flown.
Can I ask you guys just a couple little caveats to make sure? You can do anything to these photographs. In other words, you're allowed to retouch them, you're allowed to composite them.
Anything you want.
Okay. And besides color, are they supposed to be, was this was the black and whites the silhouettes, or is it both categories kind of?
Both.
Both
Okay.
categories.
Okay. Okay. So
I'm sorry, Greg, can you move the little cursor off of the picture? Thank you.
okay. So one of the presentations I've worked on recently is the concept of something that I wish somebody had brought to my attention when I was much younger. And it's the concept of what's called figure ground relationship. Figure ground is an art term where we talk about the figure meaning the subject. And to me, in this photograph, that is the gentleman walking on the beach. The ground is basically the background, everything else, and the figure ground relationship needs to be strong, and silhouettes illustrate this, so the viewer has no problem discerning the subject. And I think when I look at this photograph here, the dynamic tension of the diagonal of the pier, going from left to right, we normally read from left to right, pulls us into the frame. We have this wonderful highlight in front of the person walking. So really this sets us up for this wonderful, image and use of space. I mean, if I had to be critical, if I, and I will try to say maybe small suggestions for each image, I would have utilized the idea of this linear pier a little bit more and maybe had the subject just a step or two before he is right here, just to move the two apart. Um, and again, that's just a personal opinion. And when I photograph people in the landscape, I tend to shoot sequences. I tend to shoot, 5 to 10 images, and I don't know if this photographer has 5 or 10. The other thing too, if you've ever looked at my work, you'll know that I like movement and I like motion. And to me, I would have thought maybe just a little bit of a blur, not a lot of blur, just a little bit of a blur of his feet would be appropriate as well. Because to me, he's not frozen in time. He's moving through this beautiful space. Um, I love also the reflection or the incident angle of the water and of the person walking on the beach. So I'm gonna I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of my favorite photographs. But if I was king, I would move him to the right. Now, you could probably circle him literally and physically move him over there as well, just to see if that worked. But I'm going to give this guy a 20.
Aurora Watcher.
Aurora. To me, when I saw this image, it reminded me of a horror movie, right? Because I see the silhouette of what I think is either an Airstream or a little Fireball trailer. I think of the movies The Hills Have Eyes. It conjures up all sorts of different scenarios. And I don't know if I thought of that the first time I looked at this image, or there's a couple other images in this group that have a little bit of a violent undertone to them. But I really enjoyed that. One of the things that I think is important in photography, and I'm working on this in the studio, is defining shapes. We see the silhouette of the tree or of the clouds against the horizon. I see the silhouette of the person in the window. I see the silhouette of the frame of the window. But my brain is filling in the silhouette of the trailer. I don't know if it was there in post or not. To me, I think if there was a little bit of definition, at least of the outline of the trailer, it would have been more successful. And we still could keep it a silhouette. To me, these digital files have so much more dynamic range that than we used to have with film. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't actually in the file. Um, by the way, you guys, I'm looking at you through my laptop, through my little screen, but I'm looking and judging at images on a large monitor that displays all of Adobe RGB 1998. It's calibrated, it's profiled. So to me, this one, the shadows are just a little bit dark. And the biggest problem I have with my students is they make their monitors, or I tell them, you guys are going to get sunburns from them because they're typically too bright. Most of the people that I work with online in a workshop, they complained about all their prints coming out too dark, and we all know that printers don't print things too dark. Printers just print what you tell them to print. And a lot of us have monitors that can be turned down a little bit. We even have the problem at Decker Studio. Somebody showed me their monitor settings, and I'm like, "Are you using this outside in full sun? If not, it's way too bright." But because we're missing the shadow detail and the outline of the trailer, I'm gonna knock this down a little bit. But I love the narrative. Both the two images before told stories, and the stories that they're telling, to me, is the hard thing to do in photography. Is creating this narrative that when the viewer looks at it, they can complete the story with their background. So I'm going to give this guy a 15. Okay.
Cool Sundown.
I love the color temperature. I love the silhouette of her profile, both of the horse and the woman. To me, one of the things I love about old historical photographs is there's so many images that are profile. We don't have that many anymore because people can't figure out how to do selfies, you know, in profile, I guess. But I love the idea of the profile. Um, I love the color. I kind of question the square. And that's kind of interesting because if you know my work, I shoot a lot of black and white square images with the Hasselblad. To me, the reason that I question the squares is I see this dynamic movement through the frame with the horizontal uh, ocean break line, 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 and I'd be interested to see what it would look like as a horizontal and as a square. Um, but I love the idea of the silhouette. I might just sneak a little bit of detail in the shadows. In other words, just a hint. So she doesn't quite look like what I would call a shade. Hopefully, you should know the the finance minister of France at one time was taxing the people to death, and he said the people said all that's left is our shadow, and his name was Monsieur Silhouette. How's that for trivia? So the story goes something like that. And since there's no shadow detail, I'm going to go ahead and go 16 on this guy.
Gone fishing.
You know, Gone Fishing is a great story. We see the bent rod, we see the ocean, we see the the specular highlights off the water. And the idea of fishing is such a wonderful kind of metaphor for so many different things in life. It's also an act of doing, right? It's not called catching, it's called fishing. And a lot of us go fishing for many reasons, and not necessarily is it just to catch fish. So I love that idea. I love the gestures of the two gentlemen. I also love the gestures of the fishing poles. One pole's bent, one pole's straight. We have a seagull or a bird off in the distance. The idea of depth and dimensionality with the atmospheric perspective. So there's so many wonderful things that are going on. I just might not put them so close to the middle again. I'm the kind of person that likes to see the whole dance. I always give too much space, and that's probably just me. And too much space meaning I might just give us a little bit more space on the right, a little bit more negative space to kind of balance the weight of the gentleman with the fishing poles. Um, and in this shot, unlike the horse photograph, there's just a little bit of detail in the man's pants on the right, and I think that works. I really do. If you have a photograph that has a space that's pure black or a space that's pure white, it loses dimensionality and it becomes a flat surface, meaning that the guy doesn't have a butt, it's just a blank flat surface. And when you can see that slight tonality, you can get some dimensionality. And I think that's really important. And so the person who created the horse might want to bring just a little hint back, like this gentleman's pants that I can just barely see. Um, and this is one of those subtle things that, to me, going back to when I worked in a traditional darkroom, you'd literally have to make a couple prints and then let them sit out there, and then you'd have to look at them. And until you held them side by side, you really wouldn't know. I don't know if you guys use the compare mode in Lightroom, where you can hold two images side by side that often, but I find that a really useful tool that I share with my students when we're working in the studio. When we got these two shots, I'm like, which one is better? And when we put it side by side, you can compare and contrast. And usually the answer is obvious when you look at them side by side. So to me, that's why I would make derivatives of files, or I would make a couple of variations so I could look at them side by side. That's one of the true beautiful benefits of digital. So this guy gets a 16.
Heckle goes night fishing.
What's interesting is that I've seen so much night photography lately, and it just seems to be getting better and better and better and better. But one of the challenges is I would say of capturing images at night is also to have them look real. Meaning, to me, I would go all the way back, and Leonardo da Vinci talks about sky, and he talks about the color blue and how he creates depth. how he creates dimensionality. As things are further away, they become more blue, they lose contrast, and they also become a little bit lighter. So while I would say the sky is wonderful, I might work with the depth and dimensionality of the pier and the boats to make sure that they don't have a two-dimensional versus a three-dimensional, meaning that the boats on the horizon maybe need to be a little less contrasting, a little bit blurrier, and maybe the pier as it recedes needs to have a little bit of haze. The penguin on the right, it's kind of juxtaposed. It's kind of fun. It's kind of quirky. It's almost kind of pop arty. And to me, when I look at images that make me smile, with humor, I always have to remember the late artist who died during just at the beginning of COVID, and it was a photographer. His name was John Baldessari, and the way he brought humor into my world in showing image. I always thought art had to be highbrow. I didn't believe that it could actually you could chuckle or smirk or smile. And this image here makes me do that: chuckle, smirk, smile. But I just might work on the depth and dimensionality. So 15.
Houses of Parliament.
If we go back to the photograph of the silhouette of the horse, I think just a slight hint of foreground detail might benefit, and not necessarily in the spires or the facade. But one of the things that I've always enjoyed doing is looking at the foreground, in other words, the water, and bringing that up. Reflections in the ground are always going to be darker than where they originate from, and that's in the sky. And just bringing it up just a little bit, adding a little bit of life to it, I think would help create more depth and dimensionality in the shot, because it does feel, I mean, I know the building, because of the linear perspective, I know it diverges and gets smaller, but I feel it is almost like a fence versus a corner of a group of buildings. And while I enjoy the silhouette, I love the clouds. I really think a little bit of something to create a three-dimensional effect. So I'm going to go 15. And I'm not quite sure if that's a big piece of dust in the sky. And it doesn't have to really be dust, because to me, it looks like a giant black dust on the left-hand side in the cloud next to the spires that have translucent windows. I might just clone that out. Somebody got really mad at me the other day and they said, that's exactly how the sky was. And I said, well, your sky looks uneven. It looks like you used your polarizer incorrectly. And they're like, I didn't use a polarizer. And I said, I didn't say that you did. If God made it like that, sometimes he needs a little bit of help. So so 15. I have
Jumping high cops in Venice.
Jumping high cops. To me, I love the idea of motion. I love the idea of movement. I think when I learned photography, I learned that only photographs that were sharp were correct. Then the photographer Keith Carter came into my world. Keith Carter with his selective focus. Keith Carter said he did a presentation one time, as he said he thought focus and out of focus were equally important in photography. And to me, sharpness as well as blur. It's one of the few places that we can really see it. And I think the problem is when I was learning photography, I hadn't figured out how to create a sharp photograph. And then once I figured out how to create a sharp photograph, then I can make the decision: when should it be sharp? When should it be blurry? And to show motion, to show movement, I think is wonderful. But couple things important to remember. This is a very dynamic movement. There's a lot of energy going on. I would turn the camera more for the Deutsch tilt. It's the German tilt. It's not Dutch tilt. It's Deutsch. But so I would turn it more so the horizon was more off, and allowed more dynamic movement, or have the horizon level perfectly level. You either got to go more or have it be perfectly level. And if you turned it a little bit and allowed it to be at an angle, you could also move them further into the right-hand side of the frame, and that diagonal line would create this really wonderful leading line over to the action. So my favorite part is it's blurry. My least favorite part is it's centered and not off axis enough. So I'm going to go 14.
Looking west.
To me, simplicity is key, and this one definitely is simple. It's a wonderful use of balance and space. I love how the minimalist idea. In fact, as I sat here looking at the images, who's ever the photographer, don't tell me, but I started removing birds. And then what I came to the conclusion is that I wouldn't remove any of the birds. I just wanted to figure out a way to move the three birds on the top a little bit apart, so I had this perfect separation between it. And then I thought, well, but when I did that, it looked fake. So my conclusion is to move one of the birds in the group of three that are stuck together apart, but then leave two of them overlapping, because it can't be, if it's too perfect, it looks fake. So that's kind of where I resonated with that. I love the widescreen. I might just take a little bit off the top and allow it to go even more pano. Let this wonderful pano stretch out. So simplicity is key to me. The idea of harmony and negative space, everything was just jiving for me on this one. So I gave it 17.
Old oak.
One of the things I always try to tell my students and anybody is don't go take pictures of things. Take pictures about things. Because there's a difference between going and taking something and going and creating something. And this is an amazing tree. I'm jealous. But it's kind of like a poster that says, "Have you seen this tree before?" Because it's a document of a tree. And when I sat there and looked at it, I saw that wonderful band of light going from the left and the right, and I thought, man, I wish they would have either given me, another frame to the right or another frame to the left, and stuck that tree not in the middle. And I love symmetry. I had a design teacher that told me this story that she thought that people were either born drawn towards symmetry or drawn towards asymmetry. And she says it doesn't matter what you were born with, always create one for the other team. And that way you have two to choose from when you edit. And I took on that mantra, and believe it or not, I now shoot both in symmetry and asymmetry. And I a lot of times choose the opposite one that I think was correct when I was taking the photographs. So don't edit when you're creating, but always give yourself options, because to me, looking at an image when you're photographing it through the camera, a lot of times is very different when you're editing it in post. So to me, a 14 on this one. Am I going too slow, too fast, or okay?
Okay,
I'm enjoying all the comments.
yes.
Is okay
I mean-
speed? Okay.
Yes.
I need a little bit. I need a little bit of feedback too. I don't know if I'm going too long or too slow.
It's perfect. I love everything that you're saying. Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
This,
if you
this,
should, I,
this one's
if you,
titled, I'm sorry,
you-
Sunset on the Dunes.
okay. This one's special, because it's about what we're here about. This is about photography, and it's about the act of creation, but it's also about the act of being out there, and exploring the world that we live in. And what I really got from this is a narrative, right? It's telling us a story. We see two people out photographing. We see them in silhouette. They're on some amazing sand dunes, but I don't think they're looking at the sand dunes. I think they're looking at something over the horizon. They're looking towards the light. All these metaphors, really came through my mind, and I was really torn between this one and the one in the water, because of the very first one, because they both had very similar kind of feeling to them. And if you've ever looked at my work, I love sand dunes. Uh, I, I love the gradation in the sky. Again, if I could be a king, I might crop it a little bit more off the bottom and allow it to go a little bit more pano. I'm so happy that they gave me a hint of detail. I can see the woman's hands in the shadow. It's not just a silhouette. There's just a little bit of detail. Um, I gave this one a 19.
Waiting for the moon.
Waiting for the moon reminded me, it's great because uh, I love how photographs connect to us, and they remind me of moments in time. At the beginning of this pandemic, do you remember there was some comet in the sky? And I made the pilgrimage many, many nights up to photograph the comet. And to me, this reminded me of the people that I saw out at night, looking at the sky, looking at the comet. Um, my one comment is my one not comment but comment is we need to think about the space on where we put things within the frame. And the more and more time I spend with photography, the more and more I start moving things away from the middle, uh, towards the edges. And by moving things away from the middle, and I mean the couple in the center of the frame, and then the moon in the center of the frame, it starts to create tension and pull us throughout the image. When we have things in the middle, a lot of times we just go there and we stop. The viewer stops. And what you really want the viewer to do is you want the viewer to move throughout the frame. You want them to look up at the sky and see the moon, and then you want them to move over and maybe see one of the constellations, and then you want them to come down on the distance horizon, and then the mountain of the distance, and then the people in the foreground, and then to start all over again. And when it's so focused on the center, you really go and stop. And when you stop, the viewing experience, I think, also stops. So give me more right, give me more left. I tell you what, I could select 30% canvas on the right and do content aware fill in Photoshop, and I can invent the crap, and it works. So try that if you ever end up putting something in the middle. So 15.
COVID unvaccinated.
One of the things I play with my students is the I show them an image, and then I ask them what they think, and then I show them the image again, and I give it a title. Titles change the way we see images. I have never ever been a titler of my photographs. I usually give a location. I sometimes give, in other words, if this was, sunset and vine, I I understand how large of a role the title can play before we ever see a photograph. That's not a comment that a title is good or bad. It's a title that you just need to be aware of. Because to me, when I go to art exhibits, and mainly I'm talking about single person shows, I never read the artist statement first. I always go look at the work and then I read the artist statement. And the reason that I do that is that I want to make sure that the work communicated to me what it was trying to create a conversation with me about without having to read it. Because if the title was necessary, a lot of times I have a problem with the work. Now, when I first looked at this, I saw the hand, I saw the knife, I saw the person with the mask, I saw the beautiful little girl in the background, and I really had no clue what it was about. When I read the title, I'm like, okay, now I know the world that we live in. I understand this. And I don't know if there's a way to convey the title in this photograph without words. And to me, that's a little bit about what I'm missing. And I think what actually makes me miss that is the hand that encroaches into the frame on the left-hand side. There's just a hand there, and the hand is holding a cell phone, and the hand, what the crossed arms is confrontational. It shows a little bit of resistance, um, and then the knife, of course, gestured up. But then the hand with the cell phone, if the hand was up like it was going to record an event, um, I think it would be more successful, or remove the hand. The other thing too is that if this is a violent confrontation, I don't know if the color temperature should be warm. To me, that color temperature is love, it's security, it's romance, and it's the complete opposite of, I think, what's going on in the photograph. Now, you could rework the color. You could make it cyan blue. You could remove the hand, and I think it would actually say something very, very different, if you wanted to get that whole idea of this uncertainty of mask, no mask, or whatever. And maybe it's just the innocence of the beautiful girl in the background that makes it hard for me to get the title. So 15.
Fly away home.
Wildlife, uh, wildlife and long lenses, really go together. The perfect silhouette, right? I mean, we've got this Olympic athlete leaping into the sky. Their toes are pointed. I think about watching, when I looked at this, I thought about watching the Olympic diving competition, and and judging the bird on its flight and how it has this eloquent lift of its neck. I thought the moment captured was wonderful. The linear movement that the clouds bring me, um, uh, to the direction of the bird. And I know the photographer was probably really excited when they got this, because the time of day, that color in the sky is just wonderful. I also love the little narrative of the bird in the lower left, that is still and in profile, because here we have a bird in flight and here we have a bird roosting. So it is kind of a nice study in, I think they're the same species. Maybe they're not. Maybe the bird on the left that has the curved nose, or is that curved nose, curved beak, is a different species. But to me, I really thought this, was a nice Audubon-esque type of study. What's interesting is that I also thought that, where would this fit in the world of nature photo competitions? And it would be interesting to take a light on location, to start using artificial light to illuminate a little bit of the underside of the bird. Yes, it would take away a little bit from the competition. I mean, from the requirements of this assignment. But I thought, to me, to illuminate the underside of that bird with a little bit of artificial light would be interesting. And I'm not saying blast it out of the sky. I'm saying bring a little bit of artificial light into it to show me some of the underbelly of the bird. But I thought this was really cool. 16.
Ghost ships.
I love this long cinema scope panorama. To me, it exhibits a really wonderful aerial perspective. In other words, we know the mountains further away because it's lighter. We have the foreground that's darker because there's less atmospheric haze. I love the balance of the mountain. The symmetry of the ships don't bother me at all. And as I sat here and looked at it, there's only one little thing that I would say would make this not perfect. And that's that little cloud on the left-hand side that has definition. And it's probably a jet trail. The jet trails, the other clouds are soft and kind of dissipated, and that one's a little bit sharp. And when I see those things, um, I don't I don't sit there and I don't look hard for them. And this is what drives my students crazy. Like, Chris, you're so critical. I'm like, no, you know what? I look at photographs every day and I scan the image, and in literally 1 second, my eye goes, why is that there? And the answer is usually the answer is from the other photographer is, oh, I didn't notice that. And I did notice it. And to me, if you took that out, I think it would be a stronger photograph. Does it ruin it? No, not at all. Not at all. But to me, I'm looking at the difference between a really good image, I think, and a great image is just like the subtle 2% of refinement. And to me, that would make it a better photograph. 16. I might also take the telephone pole out of the middle of it, but that was it.
Moon and two palms.
I drive by two palm trees every day, looking over the ocean as I take my wife to work. And when I saw this, I'm like, ooh, the moon would never be there for my two palm trees. Uh, and and to me, this is a wonderful observation. Um, it made me think, in all honesty, it made me think of somebody kicking a field goal because we got the moon through the goalposts. And when I started smiling, I thought of John Baldessari and how he brought, a little bit of humor. And this is a beautiful photograph. I like the use of space. I like how the two really strong silhouettes are balanced with the clouds on the right. I enjoyed, the idea of the moon, the compression, the longer lens. I don't know if it needs like one more element, and the element could be just a little bit of horizon. But the horizon might have been all weird. Um, but that's where I kind of thought that it needed just one more thing. Be careful. When I see things like this, I mean, I know palm trees have really sharp edges, and it seemed just a little bit soft when I looked at it. And to me, it lost a little bit of its I would say intrigue because the palm trees were a little bit out of focus or a little bit soft. If it's because the exposure's long and the wind's blowing, then my answer is let the wind blow longer and let the shutter move to show the palm trees moving. Um, so because of that, I gave it a 15.
Pier at sunset.
I commend the photographer for this is I think the one of the few that they took the horizon line and they placed it in the upper third. When you move the horizon line in the upper third, you accentuate the foreground. And to me, that is what's so beautiful about this picture is that amazing detail of the light underneath the pier and the water. I want to I want to go grab a picture off my wall and I want to show you guys something. This will be a show and tell. This is one of my heroes. This is a photograph by Michael Kenna. And one of the things that Michael Kenna does is he switches these two. Okay, so go ahead and go back to the picture. One of the things that I think is fun to do in the landscape is to flip the sky density and the land or the foreground earth density. It changes the way we look at things. And I'm not saying I would make the sky any darker, but I would say it would be interesting to see what happens if you made the foreground a stop or two lighter. Um, if you made the foreground a stop or two lighter, I think the beautiful detail in the ocean might come out a little bit more. And because of that, I think that you're missing some of the true potential that's in this image. So I might lighten the foreground up a little bit, keep the blacks of the shadows the same, and maybe throw some clarity in there. Because to me, I love the light coming across the water underneath the pier, and I think it's just hidden a little bit. Um, so, 16.
Sunrise at Death Valley.
I thought really hard about this. Um, I'm sure it was hard to do. I mean, it's a long lens. You're running around. The sun is coming up. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, where would I put the sun? Do I want the sun completely above the horizon? Do I want the sun like perfectly silhouetted behind her? I remembered wasn't the ET movie logo, wasn't ET silhouetted behind the moon? So I thought of what I had seen before. And then I thought, you know, I think it would have been successful if the sun was only just a teeny sliver coming up above the horizon because I couldn't figure out what to do with the sun. And then it made me compare this image to the previous image where we had photographers on the horizon, because to me the sun I think takes a little bit away from the photograph. I don't think it makes the photograph. I love the silhouette. I love the distant horizon lines. I love this wonderful leading line that we have to the photographer. Compositionally, I think it's wonderful. Yeah, I might crop off the foreground a little bit, but I don't know if I'd want to put personally would want to put the sun in the photograph behind her. Um, if it was on the right hand side of the sky and you balance the sun with her or them, I don't know. I'm sorry if it was a guy. I just saw a ponytail, but I have issues with the ball of the sun. Um, and I think it complicates the simplicity of this really beautiful image. So 15.
Sunset at Badwater.
When I saw this, I'm like, ooh, I got one exactly like that, but mine's in black and white. So I right off the bat like this photograph. You know, to me, this has a great narrative. Yes, I know it's sunset, but but most people wouldn't know, is it the breaking of the dawn or is it going into dusk? Looking over somebody's shoulder, I love the idea of the journey. I always call those things God rays because I don't know, they remind me of God rays. uh, the one teeny caveat is I'd be really careful if that horizon line is bullseye level. I don't know if it is. I don't know if it isn't. It kind of looks like it's a little bit off. But to me, it's the gesture of the person. Um, and by the way, all my photographs lately have people in them because to me, it is the relationship of the landscape, and believe me, we've left our mark in many places. Um, and the gesture of the person with the closed eyes, I might have arms to the side and space between the arms. I think it would make the image a little bit stronger. And this is tough, especially if you're an observer and you're not directing them. Um, if the person is participating, I would actually have them get the arms away from their body because to me, the closed arms tends to be a little bit opposite of what beauty of the basking sun that I see. And that's a personal emotional connection to the photograph. I love the idea. I love the use of space. Be really careful, you guys. I did this photograph with an original Canon 1DS, the very first full frame Canon camera, which was or would be 18 years old because I bought it before my daughter was born and she turns 17 at the end of the month. That camera could pull the dynamic range in this photograph from the detail in the sky to the detail in the shadows. And I want to see a little bit of differentiation in that highlight. I know it can be done with modern cameras, or even the crappy ones are way better than what we had 19 years ago. So be careful with your file uh, because I bet you that information's there. Just tweak it a little bit. So 16.
All the hoopla. Hoopla.
To me, this was the closest image in the whole group that was abstract. And I love it. I love the ambiguity of what's in front of the lens. I love the idea of scale. To me, yes, we live close to what these are, so we know what they are. But to me, it's just this fun, man-made contemporary landscape. It's not water, but it's like a reflection off a lake, and I love every bit of it. So 17.
Nightlife silhouettes.
I think I ate my lunch right to the left of that around 30 or 40 times along the river, just opposite Notre Dame. Um, you know, to me, to capture the spirit of the city, the light dancing across the water, um, uh, the the sharing of ideas and energy that goes on at night down there, I think is really something special. And I hope that everybody has an opportunity to experience that part of Paris. Um, when you do take nighttime photographs, you know, you don't have to have a tripod. You can set it on. There's enough benches and walls and different things that it's easy to do with today's modern digital cameras. I just had a feeling that this is looking through a window, and I don't, and it might not be through a window, but I saw some ghosted signs up in the trees in the upper right that I couldn't quite figure out what they were. And they might not be ghosted signs. That might just be things in the trees. And when I saw those, I'm like, what else is in the shadows? And I started looking along the water, and I'm glad that they kept the people's feet. Um, but if it was my picture, I would try to figure out some way to just lighten up the band of people in the middle so we could see a little bit more of the narrative that's going on, because there's wonderful little conversations that are going on in there and they're kind of hidden. And I think that's the true secret of this photograph, is the conversations of the groups of people. I love Deanne Arbus's quote that a photograph is a secret about a secret. And I want to know more. And that got me looking in the shadows, and I wasn't really able to get in there. So open up the shadows a little bit of the people in the middle. I find when I photograph in the metro, there's a band of people. I always end up darkening the tops and bottoms and lightening just the people so we can see them a little bit more, because naturally they tend to be dark. So 16.
Smoke and fog.
You know, what a wonderful use of this diagonal, this diagonal of this mountain ridge as it kind of meanders down and disappears. Um, this is one of those shots that I think that the sun is almost the exact same spot that the guy was walking along the beach in the very first photograph, and I just wanted to move it to the right a little bit more. Just move it to the right, and my or whack off some of the right and grow me a little bit onto the left. And we know it's not called the rule of thirds. I always try to correct people. It's been bastardized into the rule of thirds. It's the Fibonacci sequence. It's the golden ratio, but it needs that really strong visual point. I would move more to the right, and then I would make the decision. Is it going to be in the upper part or the lower part? So either trim off some of the trees on the bottom or trim off some of the sky on the top. So uh, I just would change the cropping just a little bit on this. Beautiful photograph, by the way. To me, it's like it's such a wonderful observation. I just might crop it slightly different. And since I think it should be cropped slightly different, I'll give it a 16.
Okay. We have a tie between number 8, Looking West, and All the Hoopla, number 19. And we're going to pick one of those for third and one of those for honorable mention.
So for me, the hoopla is slightly better, just slightly better, like a quarter point better than the birds.
Okay. All right.
Got one more honorable mention, don't you?
Oh, that's right. We have a rule in our club that there's an honorable mention for every 10 images entered. And since we had over 20 images, we get to pick another honorable mention. So let me see. Oh boy. So we're going
There's
to
a whole lot of 16s.
there is a whole lot of 16s. So let me read them. We have number 3, Cool Down. Number 4, Gone Fishing. Number 13, Fly Away Home. Ghost Ships.
Which one?
Ghost Ships, which is number 14.
Okay.
Number 16, Pier at Sunset. Sunset at Badwater, which is number 18. And 20, Nightlife Silhouettes. Oh, and Smoke and Fog, 21. And from these, we get to pick one for Another honorable mention. The hoopla doesn't belong. Yeah, okay.
Do I get to pick it?
Yep.
Yeah.
You get to pick it. You get to be, you're the
Yeah.
judge.
Can I pick two?
I wish, we're lucky we get one more. We normally
Okay.
only have one
Okay.
honorable mention.
It's the birds flying home.
Okay, so that would be
That one.
That
This one,
fly away home.
13.
there it is, 13, Fly Away Home. Okay, now we're ready.
I need to switch my background. I gotta get my cheat sheet up.
This is All Alone When the Pretty Birds Have Flown in our first place by Jeannie Sparks.
Good job, Jeannie.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Aurora Watcher by Cheryl Decker. Cool Sundown by Ed E. Powell. Gone Fishing by Alan Upshaw. Heckle Goes Night Fishing by Gregory Doudna. House of Parliament by Tony Martindale. Jumpin' High Cops in Venice by Rosie Brancasio. Looking West, an honorable mention by Larry Decker.
Nice image, Larry.
Yeah, nice image.
Old Oak by Frank Tromp. Sunset on the Dunes in Second Place by Elaine Calvert.
Yay, Lane.
Nice going, Elaine.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I love the way the clouds stream from right to left at an angle.
That was all nature there. Waiting for the Moon, Flavio Parigi. COVID Unvaccinated by Gregory Doudna. Fly Away Home, honorable mention by Jeannie Sparks.
Good one.
Thank you.
Nice photo, Jeannie.
Thank you.
Ghost Ships by Alan Upshaw. Moon and Two Palms by Cheryl Decker. Pier at Sunset by Frank Tromp. Sunrise at Death Valley by Ed E. Powell. Sunset at Badwater by Larry Decker. All the Hoopla by Jeannie Sparks, and third place.
Oh.
Nighttime Silhouettes by Cheryl Decker. And Smoke and Fog by Frank Tromp. Nice. A lot of nice images.
Nice photos, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job, everyone.
Okay, we have 14 monochromes. We'll step through them for a quick review and then we'll go back and hear the comments. Okay, this is our first image.
Arrival number 1A.
So one of the things that that I enjoy about looking at black and white images is it really strips away the influence that color can have over us. And I also love the idea that, you know, it instantaneously becomes an abstract type photograph because it's in black and white. I mean, we see in color. I always love to ask my students, do you think if color was invented before black and white, we would ever do black and white? And my answer is I always love to listen to what they think. You know, that's like if they invented you know, color paint the very first, would we ever have a pencil drawing or a charcoal? And my answer is of course we would. You know, that's my idea. And in addition to being black and white, I love the idea of movement. I love the idea of motion, because as we go through life, you know, things aren't frozen in time. They are very fluid. And if you've ever been in a metro, some metros are very noisy. And how do you capture, you know, the idea of noise, and how do you capture the idea of things are always moving? And to me, when you take the camera and you come from above and pointed down, and then you have this great diverging lines. It really I think emphasizes or enhances the idea that this is like dynamic, always moving, always changing environment. Nothing is ever still. And one of the difficult things that you can't do in a photograph is you can't capture smells and you can't capture sounds. But if you've ever been in the metro, there's this unique odor that they have, and there's also this unique sound. And this kind of captures kind of some of the sound with the vibration that's going on within the scene. Um, if I had to be, you know, ultra critical, I might say the gentleman, which I say is in the right upper third of the frame. I just wish the background behind him was just a teeny bit darker, just a hint of detail to make sure that we're not losing it. But I love this photograph, and it really makes me miss the metro. And those of you who have never done it, go when it's safe. Go to Los Angeles and ride the amazing metro system that's down there, because you really can't get all around a lot of places, and it's too clean and unused. We need to use it more. But I love this picture. It really captures, I think, the essence of the time I've spent in the metro, and I'm going to give this one a 20.
Evening at the Getty.
I think this image right here is one of the best examples of having silhouettes and how quickly you can identify the subjects because of the silhouettes. And each level has in my mind a very different narrative. At the bottom level, we have two friends that are, you know, one's photographing the other. On the middle level, you have a group of people, and it's a very different dynamic environment. And then on the top, you kind of have the observers, you know, the birds that sit up in the top of the tree, and they kind of look down. I'm also intrigued by how we've decided to take our camera and set it on the railing to lead us into the frame, something that I love to do. And it's like, they did a good job. And came right out of the playbook. The only thing I question is it's so hard when you lead in with a railing. Where do you start that lead in? Do you start it from the middle, the left third, the right third? In other words, if you move the camera literally to the left about an inch, the railing starts to come out a little bit more to the right. Um, but I think this is a wonderful example of how you can create separate stories within a single frame. 19. When I looked at this photograph, I was drawn to the wonderful silhouette, the great use of space, how you have this nice diagonal line that brings us down the mountain to this fisherman. I kind of got hung up in the water. I wasn't quite sure what I was seeing because it's a little posterized, it's a little filterized, I think. Um, and my answer to that is that I would do it more so the artifacting became obvious, or I would do it less. And I'm not, and when we're done with this, somebody's gonna have to tell me what caused that because it looks a little different to me. Um, I've never seen anything like that because the mountains are smooth, the sky is smooth, the guy's so perfect, and yet the water is posterized in around 12 or so different tones. I don't know to me if it's important to have that small little seaweed, and you might want to move your mouse off the screen. I kept trying to move it with my mouse. Um, but there is a little clump of seaweed that, or maybe it's his bait or whatever, that's down on the surface of the water. I don't mind it there. I just kind of wish it was more towards the corner of the frame. But because of the water is weird, I'm gonna give it 15.
I'm sorry, the title of that was Fishing at Fishing at Sunset at Halama Beach. And this one is Goodyear Blimp.
To me, this is a wonderful John Baldessari photograph. To me, the juxtaposition of the palm tree and the Goodyear blimp that's kind of in the shape of either a date or a palm, it really resonated with my heart. It made me smile. It reminded me that photography you can enjoy. And it's kind of goofy because it reminds me of like a Richard Prince one liner, but it works very successful for me. You guys might hate me, but I think it's a 17, and that's it. I looked at it, I'm like, I think this is great. Wait, 18.
18?
18, yeah. Yeah, I sorry about that.
Okay. This is In the Harbor.
It's a little too This is a dynamic moving situation. In other words, this boat is moving through the water. To enhance the idea of movement, you either put the boat in the left-hand portion of the frame and give it space to move into, or you put it on the right-hand side of the frame as it's pushing out of the frame because it's moving. It's kind of bullseyed in the middle. I know it's not in the middle, but it needs more space on the left or more space on the right. Because by putting it in the middle of the frame is a place of balance, it's a place of rest. It's where things don't move. Yet this boat is going put 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 across the frame, and it needs breathing room on either the right or the left. Um, I enjoy the person on the stand-up paddleboard in the left hand, upper left hand. I just might maybe open up the shadow of that mountain horizon line just to let us see a little bit more that the person was in the stand-up paddleboard in the background. Um, I I know people are enamored with long lenses. I have a really long lens, and I can never figure out how to use it because I always think that it gets in too tight. And to me, this just might be a little bit too tight. So 14.
On the Edge.
What a great, not only silhouette, but what a wonderful, juxtaposition. This tonality of this smooth sky, the silhouettes of these people, against this really different foreground. And to me, this image here uh, shows us how wonderful, threes can be, even though they're a pair and a pair and a pair. It's really three. If I had to be critical, and I wouldn't change anything, I just wish there was just a teeny bit more space on the right or the left. But this is a wonderful picture, and with the movement that it creates. The narrative of the people walking in groups along this. Um, so 16.
I'm gonna have a hard time with this title, but Sunset at Bukoki Pueblo.
Looking at the Anasazi ruins or the Pueblo ruins or whatever, to me, and of course we've got the silhouettes of the people that are observing. When the railings are right there, I have a hard time trying to relate the railings to the metaphor or what we're trying to say with the picture. If you're trying to show that the place is visited and the railings to help all people, I kind of wish that he was holding the railing or grasping the railing, because the railing is there to support us, not support the dwelling, unless it's a physical support, which I don't think it is. I don't think it's there to keep anything from falling over. I think it's there to keep people from falling over. I just kind of wish that there was a hand holding it, or somehow relating that to the humans. Photographing people, what I found out is the gestures when people walk, just the space beneath an arm, the space between the legs. If you notice the person on the right, there's space between their legs and there's space between their right arm, but there's not space between their left arm. So to me, when you photograph people, and they're moving, take lots of images. I shoot 10 frames a second. I might do a burst of like 5 or 7 images so I can see the movement when somebody's moving and grab a specific frame. And right now, the people don't appear to be, I would say, as fluid as humans that I would like to see. And it's the gesture of how we move throughout this space. So 14.
Let's see, Wilson Temple.
I've seen silhouettes behind frosted glass. I've seen silhouettes behind, curtains, and they're always very mysterious and they're always very intriguing. And there's always this aura of mystery about them because you don't really know what's on the other side. I love that about this image. I mean, I see that it's a saxophone, or I think it's an alto saxophone or something like that. So it gives me a little bit of music. I just don't know if it's just printed overall too light. You know, I might just make it so dark and murky that you can still see a little bit of detail in the shadows, but not so bright, and sell the idea of mystery, sell the idea of this is behind it. I also am glad they included this wall. If I could be a better photographer, one of the things that I've always tried to do is if you steal a page from Andre Cortez, I'm sorry, not Cortez, but Eugene Auger, he never photographed straight in the walls. He always came off at oblique angles, meaning he would either move to the right or to the left. I always look at things straight on. And this wall that's straight on, I think it would be more intriguing if we moved off to the left or to the right just a little bit at an oblique angle. and allowed this diamond, whatever it is, to have some perspective, some what we call ship's prow. In other words, so it either diverges or converges on that plane, and it would just pull us through it a little bit. But it's really cool. 16.
Clock and Musée d'Orsay.
Musée d'Orsay. Yes, very,
Musée
very cool.
d'Orsay.
I don't say it right either. That's okay. It's it's the inside of the old train station. To me, one of the things that I had a hard time in the beginning until I started really paying attention to Walker Evans images. A curator told me Walker Evans had the ability to look through time, no metaphor for the clock, right? To look through time when he created images. And what at first was an annoyance to me, everywhere I went, I saw people with cell phones. I now realize that those have a wonderful timestamp on them. In other words, just looking back at pictures that have the iPhone 5 in it, oh my God, that's so long ago, right? Now we have the iPhone 13. I would show, I would either lighten the foreground or bring up the screens just a little bit to show the act of photographing. In other words, you got these two wonderful people on the left-hand side, and I would just bring that up a little bit so we can see the clocks on their cameras. Because to me, that helps create the narrative. These people are there, they're taking pictures of a clock, and you're taking pictures of people taking pictures of a clock. And I think that's a fun little narrative going on. And so you could still keep the idea of the silhouette. You could still keep the shadow of the clock. I just would bring up the iPhone screens just a little bit. I think it would enhance the narrative. 15.
In flight.
When I first saw this, there's a movie company, either a movie company or a production company that has almost a storyboard like this of a bird flying across it. And to me, this is a wonderful piece of what I would say is art, that they've taken a photograph and they've taken it another complete level. What was the title of this again?
This was called
In flight.
In Flight.
Info.
In Flight.
Info.
everybody else how to fix this for the future. Okay, thank you.
I love all the abstract background. I love the cross hatching. I love the idea that this is more of an illustration. I do question, and just to put it in your minds, to me, when I talk to students, I always tell them, where is the point of view of the camera, right? The camera puts the viewer in the position of looking at this. And this bird is not above us. This bird actually might be a teeny bit below us because I can see the back of it. I mean, I can see the back of its tail feathers. So when it says in flight, am I in flight? And it's because of that POV that I think if the photograph was a little bit lower, it might be a little bit stronger to go along with the title. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not an amazing picture. I'm just kind of questioning the title and where the picture is taken from, because I'm actually above this raptor. So be careful where the POV of the photograph is. But to me, it's beautiful. I just feel just the POV could change a little bit. So 16.
shooting the landscape.
Gestures, you know, to me, the we all know what they're doing. You know, they're taking photographs. The person on the right-hand side, you know, it's this wonderful gesture. We have both hands. We see the camera. Um, I just wish it was repeated on the other side. You know, I just wish he was turned a little bit more. I don't know if there was a moment where you could have seen both of his hands and both of her hands. It would be a stronger photograph if it did. I'm not quite sure if there's a viewfinder on the camera. I don't know if there's a screen on the camera, but if there was a little hint of that, I think it would create, you know, a little bit more shape. The only shape that I see is I see a little bit of hint of detail on her cheek and a little bit of hint of detail on the screen on the gentleman on the left. Here's where I think it kind of gets flat, and I would just allow a little bit of shadow detail to come in so I can see. Now, if your monitor's really bright, you might be able to see it. But on my monitor, which is at 110 candles per meter squared, I can't see anything. 15.
Spooky tree.
Spooky tree. That's right, man. They're waiting for you to die, and then they're gonna come eat you. That's exactly what I thought. I was on a road about 400 miles down Baja, and I stopped, and sitting on top of all the cardone cactus were like 2 or 3 turkey vultures just sitting there waiting for me to die. And that's exactly what I thought here. I love the tree. The tree was very, I think, poignant to be dead as well, um, for the birds to be perched on. I love the bird up on the top, how its wings are are stretched out there, and the tips, the fingers at the end of the wings we can see. It reminded me very much of the other photograph of the other two birds that you've kind of given me two different style guides, right? Here's a bird in flight, and here's a bird kind of perched at rest. I love the idea of the silhouette and the dark shadows because you know these birds do represent something kind of dark because they're usually around death. Um, my one caveat is the space. I kind of feel a little bullseye again with everything in the middle. I don't know if there's a little bit more. You know, to me, if you could stretch out a third more on the right hand side, so you had all this negative white space balanced with this heavy darkness, I think it would breathe better. And since there's not that space, I'm going to give it a 15.
The gnat.
Oh, this is interesting because I'm glad I can see this larger. I couldn't see it uh, on my screen. What I thought was dust, I can now see are two birds flying against the mountains in the background. This is a very interesting silhouette, juxtaposing these outdoor adventures against the distant mountain peaks and the snow. Um, Here's just one of those times that it's such a dramatic location. It got me thinking, what would it have been like if one of those persons was standing up, looking out at the mountain? Um, and this is horrible because I'm like, I would orchestrate that, or I would sit and wait for that, because while they are perched relaxing, they're kind of overlapping one another, and I can't see their beautiful profiles. And to me, if you could see them perfectly profiled, I think it would be an amazing photograph. If somebody was standing up, um, and it's either a wait for the moment, uh, or maybe figure out a way to get them and you can so you can see them, because right now it's kind of awkward because there's like a knee and a knee, and then 2 cross knees. And it's got all the elements, but the orchestration is not quite there. Don't feel bad to go up and ask people, hey, I really want to take your picture. Could you just sit up and look out at the mountains? I'll love to send you one. And it's horrible, but that's the kind of person that I am. So 15.
Five people at a bridge.
To me, this is a wonderful kind of mysterious nighttime photograph. But it needs that left-hand wall, that whole left-hand wall needs to be brought down around 2 stops. Things that are out of focus tend to go lighter. And I'm being drawn to this wall on the left-hand side. I shouldn't even look at that wall on the left-hand side. It should mirror the wall on the right-hand side. And then I would be totally drawn to the light and then the silhouette of the amazing hat. If you literally just took that left-hand wall and darkened it 2.5 stops, this would be in my top 3 or probably top 2, and I have to judge it the way I see it. And again, thinking about the dance, if I had to be ultra critical, I might show the feet of the people in the foreground. That would enhance the whole idea of what's going on. But I love the hat. I love the hat that it's sharp, and the people that are on the right are a little bit out. But because the wall on the left is so light and it's distracting, I'm going to give it a 16.
Okay, we need to break a tie for honorable mention.
Yeah.
And so I'll read off the numbers.
I can't give 2 honorable mentions. That's not fair.
No. We have number 6 on the edge. Number 8, Wilson Temple. Number 10, In Flight. Number 14, 5 People on a Bridge.
It's going to be the On the Edge.
On the Edge.
Number 6.
If you could darken the wall, I would change my vote.
Okay. Arrival, number 1A, and first place by Jim McInnes. Evening at the Getty, second place by Elaine Calvert.
Beautiful photo, Elaine.
I like the lighting, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. Fishing at Sunset at Halama Beach by Rosie Brancaccio. Goodyear Blimp in third place by Tony Martindale.
Nice photo, Tony.
That is. In the Harbor by Alan Upshaw. On the Edge, honorable mention by Flavio Parigi.
Sorry, can I ask you one question?
Yeah, good.
Christopher, can you repeat one thing? Because when you make the comment, right at the end, you say, if I have to be very specific, I make, you say something that you want to change, or?
I probably would want a little bit more negative space to the left.
Okay.
Or to the right, just because they're kind of centered. And in other words, they all 3 need to move to the right-hand side a little bit, or a little bit more to the left-hand side.
Okay.
We got to pull away from this balance and this bullseye symmetry, in my opinion. in my
No, yeah. Okay, no, but because I've lost the last this part. Thank you.
You bet. Very nice picture, by the way.
Sunset at Ukoki Pueblo by Gregory Doudna. Wilson Temple by Ed E. Powell. Clock at Musée d'Orsay by Jim McInnes. In Flight by Rosie Brancasio. Shooting the Landscape by Tony Martindale. Spooky Tree by Elaine Calvert. The Nap by Flavio Parigi. And Five People at a Bridge by Jim McInnes. Yay! Thank you for all of the wonderful comments. That was
Yeah, they're very, very instructive, Chris.
You know, I probably could talk more, about the photographs. And to me, I just wanted to give, constructive criticism. And if there's any questions or comments, if I didn't make anything clear, I'd love to answer. I see a hand going up.
I have a question.
Yes,
Um,
Janine.
and I very much appreciate your comments and suggestions. I had the picture of the man walking on the beach with the pier.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
And thank you. I have other pictures of him, and I do have him just a little bit farther to the right, walking into the frame. But I even have him a little bit farther to the right, walking out of the frame. And I'm wondering if that would work, or if walking out of the frame is not such a great idea. I mean, he's not on the edge. There's still plenty of space between him and the edge of the frame.
I mean, I'd have to see it. I kind of like the way you have it coming into the frame.
Uh-huh.
It would be an interesting dynamic because the pier is bringing us in as a diagonal, and I don't know if you force him out to the right. That would be a good thing. One of the things that we want to do, and I read a study about this, how they tracked people's eye movements. In other words, and they want, in other words, as they flowed through the image. And if the pier led us to him, you don't want the viewer to leave the frame. You want the
Yeah,
viewer. You want the viewer to
can
go.
I share? Can I share my screen and show you one of the shots I have of him going the other way? And
Sure.
would you guys mind if I did that?
No,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay, let me see if I can put him on a full frame. No, that's it. So that's him walking the other way.
Do you have him further to the right though?
He is a little further to the right on this one than the other one. I don't think I have him further than that.
I kind of wish he was in between where he is and the edge. And by the way, when I saw it, I immediately thought of the hat, and it reminded me of Carlos Santana. I don't know why. It just kind of reminded me of the music vibe that he would represent. I enjoy the move. I enjoy the movement to the right. The one thing you got to be careful with, and I love how you've broken up, or the reflection is broken up. It's hard when reflections are perfect. How you have literally the person's silhouette below and above, and I like how that one's broken up. Do me a favor really quick. Grab your crop tool. And grab the upper right-hand corner. No.
Okay.
Go.
Oh, don't do that. Okay.
Grab the upper right-hand corner and bring it down towards him. Just no, at a diagonal.
Oh,
Go
sorry.
up.
Okay. There? Up more?
Just a little bit. Let me see what that looks like.
Okay.
And just hit return.
It's Horizon.
I like it when he's closer to the edge, and I kind of like it that he's going out of the frame.
I'm always afraid to have people going out of the frame, so that's why I didn't go with this one. But I agree with you. I think there should be more space between him and the pier. At first, I was trying to get him in that light from the sunset, and then when I was looking at it later, I'm going like, yeah, it'd be better to have more space, and so I don't have as many of these out of him out of the edge as I do of him in that light.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's interesting that you like it going out of the frame. If I could, I'm going to look at doing that more. I'm always trying to keep him in. I don't want you walking out of my frame. But,
And what's the shutter speed? A 250th?
let's see.
Yeah, it was like either 200th or 250th. It's in the upper right hand corner. Yeah. See
Oh,
if that was me, I probably would photograph him at a 30th of a second because I like leg movement. Harder to shoot. But people walking between a 15th and a 30th is fun. But not necessarily always fun.
right.
Mhm.
I
Okay,
like the
thank
way
you.
the one that was in the bottom center. I like the way his legs are positioned in that frame.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Right here.
gestures of feet and how the feet contact the earth, I think are so important. And that's why when I see things like that, I shoot a lot. You know, I'll do a burst of 10 in a second or 11 in a second so I can have the subtle nuances as the heel hits the earth, as the foot rolls forward. Um,
So I'm just interested if you agreed, if you like the foot placement there, or if it's better in the other version.
I'd have to
Is this
see.
the one
I
you
don't remember.
liked?
That was the
One you
one I
liked?
liked. I liked that.
I know I don't like the ones where his legs are close together.
Mm-hmm. I don't
Um,
like this as much either.
Okay.
Okay, let me
Alrighty.
get out of here. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And
so,
again,
so,
this is one opinion.
so you mentioned one of my favorite photographers, Diane Arbus,
Hmm.
and the quote that's pretty well known, but you only gave part of it.
Well, I can all my quotes are written down. I'd have to go read it.
It's it's a photograph is a secret about a secret. The second line is the more it tells you, the less you know.
Yeah.
So it's I think you got to put them both together.
Okay.
Just that's my criticism.
I love her work, and you know, to me it's just to be able to look through somebody else's eyes on how they see the world and what they find interesting is one of the true unique things about photography. And it's hard to get young people to not emulate something that they like and to accept who they are and show me how they see the world.
And since you mentioned it brings up that you also mentioned Keith Carter, and you know a lot of his unusual perspectives are because he lost an eye. He had a cancerous tumor, and that's affected his perspective, obviously.
And more than I think about it, I should have said, Jim, also my great design teacher also told me to compose an image and then compose it through your other eye.
Hmm.
And that's one of the beautiful things that a tripod allows you to do. You know, it's kind of hard to shoot through both eyes, hand holding, but I also find that, you know, if I compose through my left eye, my composition is usually better, even though I normally shoot with my right eye. And I also find looking at the back of a screen and composing is very different than looking through a viewfinder.
Yes.
Um, and how you perceive the image. And I enjoy that about looking, I look less through my viewfinder and more at the screen. And now when I do portraits, I look at the screen and then I look at the person. And I don't have a metal thing in front of my face. Because the metal thing in front of your face really changes who they are. And if you look back, with the waist level finder
Right.
of Dorothea Lange and Vivian Meyer and
Harvest.
I think that metal thing in front of our face really changes what's on the other side of the camera. So I agree.
I think it's also nice when you're looking down at those old cameras. It's not as intimidating as putting it right up in front of a person's face. So that makes for more relaxed, maybe, and less hesitance on the part of the subject.
Yes. Yeah. And old time photographers, they had a cable release with the air bulb and they put the piece of film in the camera. They couldn't look at the camera. They'd stand off to the side and they'd look at the person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can't shoot profiles unless you can literally walk to the side and have the person look at you. You can't say, look over there. You literally have to walk over there and say, look at me, and direct them. Having somebody stare off into space is a really, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all.
I wish I was, most of the time I take photographs of people that are far away from me. I have a hard time approaching people, I guess. And so that's something I'm trying to work at, but
So I have an assignment that I give all my street photographers. It's called 10 yeses or 10 nos. And when I give the assignment, there's always one or two students that raise their hand and say, what if I get 10 no's? And the assignment is to go out and ask 10 people if you can take their picture. And someone always says, well, what if somebody says, what if I get no yeses? I've literally only had one or two students get one or two no's, and it's usually young guys, and it's usually when they ask young girls, because the girls think that this has ulterior motives. But taking photographs of people is hard to do.
yeah.
But you can do it if you work at it.
Well, this is a situation. If I see somebody and I find them interesting and I think what they're doing would be fun to photograph, and they're being real, they're being themselves. I can't really go up to them and talk to them because I'm going to ruin that moment. And I'm really shy about putting my camera up because I think,
Okay,
I'm not, yeah.
So when Henri Cartier-Bresson photographed Matisse, he talks about being able to disappear. You need to figure out a way that you can disappear, and you need to figure out a way to become the fly on the wall
Without feeling sneaky.
Well,
Yeah,
because shooting a camera with a waist level finder or whatever is one of the techniques that I use. But it's also, if you own the space and they come into your space, it's usually easier to photograph them because you're not encroaching upon their coming into you. And to me, that's why photographing people is about anticipating what's going to happen, not about reacting to what something happened. If you're reacting to seeing something, it's already happened. If you're anticipating it, then it's coming into your space, and it's a dance, and you've got to own the space, and you have to figure out a way to disappear, and that's hard to do.
But
yeah, I really admire photographers that are good at that.
Yeah.
I agree. It's really hard for me.
but Bresson was using a Leica,
Mhm.
and when he shot that photo of Matisse, he had been with him for a long, long time before he made the photograph.
That's
So,
right, because he disappeared.
right.
He disappeared. He would go for hours at a time, and if you hang out on a street corner for hours at a time, Helen Levitt, she photographed on the block that she lived on, and if you went out and photographed the same place, eventually you're just part of the environment. You're the person with the camera, and they won't pay attention to you. But it's hard. it's hard to show up at a place that you've never been before and to see something that intrigues you and to take pictures of it in that type of manner. But you can do it.
The
Yeah.
problem with where I live is that I have to wait for a year or two before anybody would show up.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
They know you're lurking there.
Very good. Very good. But you know, I give my students an assignment. It's street photography in the city and street photography in the country. Go to some remote place and try to create a photograph like a busy street, yet there's only one or two people there. And usually, you know, usually you got to go with somebody that you know and start photographing them. That's the first step. If you can photograph somebody that you know who they are, but I don't know who they are. Well, everybody in the club might know who that guy is on your shoulder, but if you show me a photograph of him out in a field, I wouldn't know that. And you know, that's one way to start the conversation. Go up to the Bakken, go up to the oil fields, bring a crew some sandwiches and say, "Can I hang around and watch what you're doing?"
That's a great suggestion.
I like that one.
Or hey, you guys hang out for a little bit after work. I have some beers.
There you go.
But you know, you can do it. A funny story. One of my students was terrified of doing this. So where did she go? She went to a bar where people were already pre-lubricated, and she said, "You know what? It was actually really easy."
No one cared anymore.
Right. But she was so afraid of what other people would think, because if you're interested in what somebody's doing, a lot of times it'll give you a pass. Or it might give you an in, right? You might not get the photograph on the first visit, but on the second or third visit, you might be allowed to disappear. I call them observational moments, right? Because the camera in you changes who people are. It does. I mean, if I put a camera up in front of your face, you change. You give me the public you, not the private you. And everybody has their own unique way of finding the private you. You just got to get out there and try it. And if you try it enough, it'll let you in. It'll happen. It really does. Unfortunately, it just takes the shoe leather time. In other words, you just have to go out and do it.
You kind of inspired me one time. We had a field trip and I didn't think I would ever find an image I could take. So I sat down on a park bench, set my camera on a tripod down at near ground level and focused down where people's feet would be walking by on the sidewalk, and set it up for fairly long exposures and sat there and paired it to my iPhone.
Oh yeah,
Sat
yeah.
down and watched as people walk by and just sit there going click, click. So I had the movement of feet, and that was all I was looking for.
You know, to me, I do something called farming events. In other words, go to where people are going to be. Go to a boardwalk, go to a fair, go to a rodeo, go to a mud truck, whatever, and don't go photograph the event, but turn around and photograph the people looking at it. Because what happens is the event is the iPhone, right? In other words, they're sitting there, they're glued to the screen. You're oblivious because they're paying attention to something else. One of my favorite pictures, I was down on Sunset Boulevard and some parade went by, and there's a woman on Sunset that's a fortune teller. And I got her picture because she wasn't paying attention. She was watching the parade, and I'm like, well, she should have known that I was going to take her picture, right? But it's if there's something to distract people, and you know it's going to be a distraction. You know, a rocket launch. And one of my favorite pictures of Eugene Auger is the people on the streets of Paris, and they're all looking at the solar eclipse, right? So next time we have a solar eclipse, go to where people are. Don't photograph the eclipse. Photograph the people going like this. Right? The rocket launch, same thing. Don't go photograph the rocket. Photograph the people going, It's hard to do because you want to see it too. But the pictures, the pictures a lot of times are on the 180 degrees of where you are.
And if you could get Ajay watching a rocket launch, then you really have something.
The photographs around Nadar's balloons are pretty
Oh,
good.
yeah.
The hot air balloons. Very cool.
Yeah.
Any more? How come there's two people that look identical, but one person's in Hawaii and the other person's in their office?
You're
And she's
muted.
muted. She's muted in both cases.
No, I'm not. I've duplicated myself.
You can do that in WebEx? Okay. I'm surprised my students haven't figured out how to do that. That way they can say they showed up twice. They'd want extra credit.
It'll be nice when we can all just not worry about where we go and just photograph again.
Mm-hmm.
Are we done recording?
Well,
Right.
thank you
Hi.
for.
Can't hear you, Cheryl.
We can't hear you, Cheryl. You're muted.
Oh, I'm not now. Can you hear me?
Barely. Poo.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.